At a luxury hotel in New York City, no one could figure out how to handle the German billionaire. Tension was rising. Staff were desperate until a humble housekeeper stepped forward and said something that left everyone speechless. Give this video a like, share your own experience in the comments, and hit subscribe. Let's keep building this community together. The Grand Imperial Hotel sparkled under the late afternoon sun of Manhattan. Its cream-colored walls glowed softly as American flags and others from around the world waved above the grand entrance. In the lobby, fresh lilies and orchids filled the air with fragrance, mingling with the rich aroma of coffee from the nearby cafe. It was the opening day of the International Investment Summit, and the atmosphere was heavy with nervous energy. Maria Geller scrubbed the marble floors near the reception desk with steady determination. At 35, her face carried lines of fatigue that she tried to mask with a warm smile. She'd been working housekeeping here for 6 years, a job born of necessity, not choice. Her gray uniform contrasted sharply with the bold pieces of contemporary American art hanging on the walls. "Move faster," Geller barked. John, the maintenance supervisor, a middle-aged man whose forehead never seemed free of frowns. "VIPs are arriving any minute." Maria nodded without looking up. On her cleaning cart, hidden beneath folded towels, rested a worn German novel, The Metamorphosis, by Franz Kafka. Nobody at the hotel knew that Maria had once lived in Munich for 8 years, working as a nanny and housekeeper for a wealthy family while studying comparative literature at a local university. Nobody knew she was fluent in German, or that she understood European culture better than most of the executives checking in. She had returned to the States when her mother fell ill, abandoning her degree with just 1 semester left. What was supposed to be a temporary pause had turned into a different life, one where her knowledge and dreams were buried under medical bills and endless responsibilities. The revolving doors of the hotel spun open, and a ripple of whispers spread across the lobby. Klaus Müller, the German billionaire whose tech empire was transforming Europe, had arrived. Tall, broad-shouldered, his silver hair perfectly combed, he commanded instant attention. His tailored dark suit set him apart from every other guest. Maria glanced up from her work to watch discreetly. She'd read about him during her late-night news scrolls, clinging to a sense of connection with a world she no longer felt part of. Alex, the hotel's director, rushed forward with a rehearsed smile. "Welcome to New York, Müller. We're honored to have you with us," he said, extending a hand. Klaus answered in deep, steady German. Alex's smile stiffened as panic flickered in his eyes. "Ich spreche kein Englisch oder Spanisch. Haben Sie jemanden, der Deutsch spricht?" Klaus explained. He didn't speak English or Spanish and asked if anyone could translate. Confusion spread like wildfire. Alex signaled to the front desk manager, who tried a few phrases in halting English. Klaus shook his head, frustration tightening his jaw. 3 more staff approached, throwing together bits of English-Spanish and even a word or 2 in French. Nothing worked. Minutes dragged on. Journalists gathered for the summit began murmuring. Some discreetly pulled out phones to capture the moment. Klaus's expression grew harder, his patience unraveling. Staff exchanged desperate looks, panic building. Maria's chest tightened. She knew that feeling, the helplessness of having so much to say, but no language to say it. She'd lived it herself during her first months in Germany, before mastering the tongue. Her heart pounded as she considered stepping in. Who would believe the cleaning lady could solve this? What would her boss think? Fear threatened to freeze her in place until she overheard Alex whisper urgently to his assistant, "If we don't fix this, he'll cancel his keynote. It would be a disaster." Maria took a deep breath. Setting her mop against the cart, she smoothed her uniform and walked steadily toward the group. Her co-workers stared startled, and John frowned deeply, but she didn't stop. Standing before Klaus Müller, she offered a small, calm smile and spoke flawless German. Möchten Sie einen Zimttee? Die Getränke hier sind ausgezeichnet und könnten nach Ihrer langen Reise sehr beruhigend sein. Would you like a cinnamon tea? The drinks here are excellent and might be comforting after such a long trip. The lobby fell silent as though a heavy blanket had dropped over the room. Klaus blinked in surprise, his stern face softening the tension in his shoulders melting away. Ah, das wäre wunderbar, he replied, breaking into a genuine smile. Endlich jemand, der mich versteht. At last, someone who understands me. Every eye turned to Maria, the invisible housekeeper, who with a few quiet words in the right language had opened a door no one else could. How on earth do you speak German? Asked Alex. His voice caught between shock and disbelief as Maria finished translating Klaus's requests about his sweet preferences. I lived in Munich for 8 years, Maria replied, her tone steady, even though her throat tightened. I worked for a family while attending university. The director stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. For years, she had scrubbed his office floors almost daily, yet Klaus Müller himself now watched her with genuine curiosity. Sie haben in München gelebt, welches Viertel, he asked, wanting to know which neighborhood she had lived in. Schwabing near the university, she answered her words, carrying both precision and quiet pride. Their conversation flowed with surprising ease. Maria interpreted flawlessly as Klaus inquired about the conference schedule, the hotel amenities, and small details that required cultural context. With each translation, she added subtle nuances that made the exchange smoother. The glances toward her shifted. The very staff who had overlooked her for years now regarded her with astonishment. Maria Alex said with a smile he'd never shown her before, "Would you please escort Mr. Müller to his suite? It seems you're the only one able to communicate properly with him." John, the maintenance supervisor, cut in sharply. But Sir Geller still has to finish mopping the lobby and cleaning the second-floor restrooms. Alex shot him a withering look. Assign that to someone else. Maria has just become our interpreter for our most important guest. Maria felt a storm of emotions collide inside her. On one hand, a rare satisfaction at finally being recognized for her abilities. On the other, a sting of bitterness, thinking about all the years she had been invisible, treated like part of the furniture. As she guided Klaus toward the elevators, whispers trailed behind them. Her plain gray uniform, once the reason no one noticed her, suddenly felt like an odd costume too small for the role she was now playing. Strange, isn't it? Klaus commented softly as the elevator doors closed, his sharp eyes catching the way staff reacted to her. How quickly the way people see you can change. Maria blinked in surprise. How could this billionaire put into words exactly what she was feeling? Sehr seltsam, she answered shyly, then added, but I'm still the same person I was yesterday. Klaus nodded thoughtfully. That's the paradox. The world shifts around us while inside we remain the same. When they entered the presidential suite, Maria paused, struck anew by the luxury she had only ever experienced as a cleaner. The carved mahogany furniture, the silk curtains, the sweeping view of Manhattan. It all looked different when she walked in as an interpreter instead of housekeeping staff. What did you study in Munich? Klaus asked in German as he scanned the room. Comparative literature, she said, her voice carrying a hint of wistfulness. I was 1 semester away from graduating when I had to come back to the US. Why didn't you finish here? The simple question unearthed years of frustration and lost dreams. Maria turned her gaze to the window where the setting sun painted the skyline in shades of silver and orange. "Life sometimes takes unexpected turns," she replied quietly. "My mother got sick. Priorities changed." Klaus studied her carefully as though reading something hidden beneath her words. "Priorities can always change again," he said, almost like a promise. Fate rarely runs in a straight line. Before Maria could answer, her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from John. "When you're done playing translator, I need you scrubbing the lobby restrooms. Don't think this gets you out of your actual job." The message hit like a bucket of cold water. Recognition or not, she was still a housekeeper, and the hotel's hierarchy hadn't magically shifted. She cleared her throat. "I should go. If you need me, you can call reception and ask for me as your interpreter." She started toward the door, but Klaus called after her, "Frau Geller." She stopped, glancing back. "The conference starts tomorrow at 9. I'll need someone for simultaneous translation. Will you be available?" A shiver of anticipation ran through her. To participate in an event she normally only saw after cleaning up the empty rooms, it seemed impossible. She answered cautiously, "I'll have to clear it with management." Klaus smiled with quiet determination. "Don't worry. I'll make sure personally that you're available. Good night, Frau Geller." As the elevator carried her down, Maria allowed herself a rare moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this chance encounter could mark the beginning of something new. But when the doors slid open and she saw John waiting, mop in hand, his frown cutting through her thoughts, she wondered if she could ever truly cross the invisible yet unyielding line separating her world from Klaus Muller's. The next morning dawned gray with a thin drizzle wrapping the city in a silvery haze. Maria had barely slept, torn between excitement and dread. She arrived at the hotel an hour early, only to find an envelope waiting for her at the front desk. "Good morning, Maria Carmen," the receptionist, who almost never spoke to her, said politely. "Alex left this for you. Looks important." Inside was a handwritten note instructing her to report to the director's office immediately, still in her uniform. Her pulse quickened. Had Alex changed his mind? Was she in trouble for stepping in the day before? The director's office was elegant, lined with dark wood panels and offering a clear view over Fifth Avenue. Alex, his silver-streaked hair perfectly combed, looked up at her with an expression impossible to read. "Maria, please have a seat," Alex said, gesturing toward a chair across from his polished mahogany desk. "We have something important to discuss." Maria sat down, back straight, and hands resting on her lap, trying to project calm, though her chest felt tight. "Mr. Mueller has specifically requested your services as his interpreter for the entirety of his stay." The director continued, flipping through a stack of papers. "That means accompanying him to all conference sessions, business meals, and any other activity requiring communication." He paused and looked directly into her eyes. "I have to admit, I'm surprised, Maria. 6 years working here, and you never once mentioned your language skills in your file." Maria met his gaze, feeling a spark of indignation. "No one ever asked, Alex," she replied evenly. "When I first applied, I requested a position in public relations and included my international experience. I was placed in housekeeping because there weren't any other openings." The director shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat. "I see. Well, the situation now requires immediate action. We'll provide you with appropriate attire so you can accompany Mr. Mueller. Your compensation will be adjusted to reflect these new temporary duties." "Temporary?" Maria asked, needing to be certain. "Of course," Alex said firmly. "For the duration of Mr. Mueller's stay, about 2 weeks. After that, you'll return to your regular responsibilities." His words landed like a verdict. The recognition she had waited years for came with an expiration date. In just 2 weeks, she would be invisible again. "Understood," she replied, holding on to her dignity. "What time should I report?" "The conference begins at 9. Be here at 8 for final instructions and your attire." As she stepped into the hallway, Maria ran into John, her supervisor. His sour expression said he already knew. "So now you're too important to clean bathrooms, huh?" He sneered. "Don't get your hopes up, Geller. Once the German leaves, you'll go right back to being a nobody." The words stung, feeding the doubts already circling in her mind. But Maria had endured far worse during her early months in Germany alone in a foreign land, clawing for every opportunity. She answered calmly, "Maybe, or maybe not." At exactly 8 a.m. the next morning, Maria walked into the conference hall. Waiting for her was a sleek black business suit, simple, elegant, and a badge identifying her as the official interpreter. The transformation was immediate. The gray housekeeping uniform that had defined her for years now hung forgotten on a rack, while her new attire carried her into an entirely different world. When Klaus Muller entered the room, his face brightened at the sight of her. "Frau Geller, guten Morgen," he greeted warmly. "I'm very glad you agreed to be my interpreter." "Good morning, Mr. Mueller," she replied in flawless German. "It's an honor to assist you." He studied her carefully, noting the change in her appearance. The suit suited her well, but he caught a flicker of unease in her eyes. "Is something wrong?" he asked, his perceptiveness surprising her. Was she really that transparent? She searched for the right words. "It's just, this role is temporary. In 2 weeks, I'll be back to my usual duties." Klaus nodded slowly, taking it in. "And does that trouble you?" She hesitated, then admitted, "It makes me question things. How skills are valued. How someone can be invisible one day and necessary the next, even though nothing about them has truly changed." He fell silent for a moment, considering her words. Then he asked quietly, "Do you know why my company is so successful, Maria?" She shook her head. "Because I see potential where others only notice the surface. Real value isn't in what we're doing temporarily, it's in what we're capable of doing." Before Maria could respond, the first guests began streaming into the hall. The conference was about to begin, a day that would test everything she believed about herself and her place in the world. Taking her seat beside Klaus at the head table, she felt the curious stares of hotel employees who had ignored her for years. She wondered what they were thinking. Now, did they truly see her, or just the tailored suit and the temporary position she now held? The conference room buzzed with voices in multiple languages. Business leaders from around the globe exchanged cards while waiters carried silver trays of steaming coffee and fresh pastries. Maria stayed close to Klaus, translating seamlessly, catching cultural nuances that might have gone unnoticed. "Tell Mr. Tanaka we appreciate his interest in our AI platform," Klaus said in German, as a Japanese executive waited patiently, "but we're not ready to expand into the Asian market just yet." Maria didn't just translate words, she carefully reshaped the message to fit the subtle cultural expectations of the Japanese businessman, softening what could have sounded like a blunt rejection. "Mr. Mueller is deeply honored by your interest," she said in English to Mr. Tanaka, and his company is carefully considering every step of its global expansion to ensure excellence in each market it enters. He looks forward to having more concrete news to share in the near future. The Japanese executive smiled, clearly satisfied with the response, and exchanged a polite bow with Klaus before stepping away. "Excellent work," Maria Klaus said, visibly impressed. "You didn't just translate my words, you adapted them culturally. That's an invaluable skill." Warmth spread through Maria's chest at the genuine recognition of her abilities. "In comparative literature, we're taught that words never exist in a vacuum," she explained. "They're always wrapped in layers of cultural context." The morning moved quickly through presentations on global investment trends. Maria translated in a steady professional tone directly into Klaus's ear, capturing every nuance. During a short break, she noticed an elegantly dressed woman watching her from across the room. Something in the woman's gaze felt unsettlingly familiar. She approached with confident steps, tall around 50, dressed in a pearl gray suit with a string of pearls at her neck, radiating quiet wealth. Maria Geller," she asked in German, her Bavarian accent unmistakable. "Is it really you?" Maria's heart skipped as she recognized Mrs. Elise Weber, the woman she had worked for years earlier in Munich, the same woman who treated her like part of the furniture in her mansion, even as Maria cared for her 3 children and kept the household running flawlessly. "Mrs. Weber." Maria replied evenly, keeping her composure. "What a surprise to see you here." Klaus's curiosity was immediately piqued. "You know each other?" he asked. "Maria worked for my family in Munich," Elise answered with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "She was our housekeeper. Very good with cleaning, though a bit distracted with her studies." Every word was carefully crafted to reduce Maria to her past role, subtly belittling her current presence. "Maria is my personal interpreter for the conference," Klaus interjected firmly, his tone making clear his respect for her. "Her cultural insight is exceptional." Elise's brows lifted clearly, surprised by his defense. "Life is full of surprises, isn't it?" she said, turning back to Maria. "From scrubbing our bathrooms to translating at international conferences. How inspiring." The sting of humiliation burned, but Maria refused to let it show. "Life is certainly unpredictable, Mrs. Weber," she said with quiet dignity. "Sometimes it takes us exactly where we need to be, even if the road isn't what we first imagined." The tension between the 2 women was palpable. Klaus, sensing the undercurrent, stepped in smoothly. "Maria, I believe the next session is starting. Mrs. Weber, if you'll excuse us." As they walked away, Maria fought to steady the storm of emotions Elise had stirred. 8 years of small daily humiliations came rushing back, being treated as invisible while she cooked, cleaned, and raised children, all while studying late into the night, exhausted but determined. "Don't let people like her define your worth," Klaus said quietly as though reading her mind. "I've met many Mrs. Webers in my life, people who must belittle others just to feel important." Maria looked at him in surprise. He spoke like he truly understood. Klaus gave a faint, wistful smile. "I wasn't always the successful businessman you see now. I grew up in a small town, the son of a shoemaker. Condescending looks aren't new to me." The unexpected confession shifted Maria's view of him. He wasn't just a privileged millionaire. He was someone who had clawed his way upward. That afternoon, as presentations continued, Maria slipped away to the restroom to regain her composure. Stepping out of a stall, she found herself face to face with Elise once more. "I always knew you were ambitious," Elise said, applying lipstick in the mirror. "The way you devoured books as if literature could lift you out of your situation." Maria washed her hands slowly, buying time to steady her voice. "Books gave me perspective." "Mrs. Weber," she finally replied. They taught me there are many ways to see the world, not just the one our circumstances dictate. Elise snapped her lipstick case shut. A word of advice, dear. Don't get too carried away with this little adventure. I know men like Mr. Mueller. They're intrigued by exotic curiosities for a while, but eventually they return to their real world. And you'll return to yours. The words pierced like needles, feeding the doubts Maria already carried. Was this truly just a brief detour, an anomaly destined to end once Klaus boarded a plane back to Germany? My world is the one I build every day, Mrs. Weber, Maria said, summoning strength from deep inside. Not the one others decide for me. She walked out with her head held high, though Elise's words clung to her like a shadow. Returning to the hall, she saw Klaus engaged in animated conversation with other executives. For a fleeting moment, the distance between their worlds felt impossibly wide. Could someone like her ever truly cross that divide? Or was she only playing a role destined to vanish when the conference ended? That evening, the main ballroom glowed for the gala dinner. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over white linen-draped tables adorned with fresh orchids. A small orchestra played classical pieces in the corner, adding to the air of refined opulence. Maria, still in her role as interpreter, remained by Klaus's side as they navigated the intricate social rituals of the evening. Her black suit, though elegant, looked almost austere compared to the designer gowns and glittering jewelry of the other women. Maria, Klaus said suddenly as they approached their table, "Would you allow me to introduce you as my colleague, rather than my interpreter? I think it better reflects the nature of your contribution." The suggestion caught her off guard. "That's very kind, but not necessary," she replied, aware of the curious stares directed at them. "I'm not ashamed of my work." Klaus nodded approvingly. "Precisely why you should be recognized properly. What you're doing goes far beyond translating words. You're building cultural bridges." The phrase struck deep. Her whole life, Maria had existed between worlds, between Mexico and Germany, between literature and the daily grind, between her dreams and her obligations. At the dinner, Klaus naturally included her in conversations, not just as a channel for communication, but as a participant. When a Brazilian investor began discussing Latin American literature, Klaus turned to her. Maria studied comparative literature. Klaus mentioned, gesturing for her to join the discussion. She might have an interesting perspective on the topic. The Brazilian investor's eyes lit up with genuine curiosity. "Really? Who's your favorite author?" Maria hesitated for a moment, torn between her instinct to remain in the background and the rare chance to finally have a voice. "Octavio Paz," she answered at last. His exploration of solitude and cultural identity perfectly captures the tension of living between different worlds. The conversation flowed easily from there, shifting toward the idea of literature as a bridge between cultures. For the first time in years, Maria found herself in the kind of intellectual discussion that had once defined her university life in Munich. Across the ballroom, she caught sight of Elise Weber, watching with a mix of irritation and surprise. Beside her, hotel staff, including Javier, moved between tables, sneaking glances in Maria's direction. "Not everyone seems thrilled with your new role," Klaus murmured quietly, noticing her line of sight. "It's complicated when someone crosses the invisible lines between worlds," Maria replied softly. "It makes people uncomfortable, as if you've broken some unwritten rule." Klaus swirled his wine thoughtfully. Unwritten rules are often the strongest, but also the most arbitrary. Sometimes breaking them is the only way forward. Later, as guests began to scatter into smaller groups, Maria saw Carmen, the receptionist, hurrying toward her with a tense expression. "Maria, sorry to interrupt," she whispered. "You have an urgent call. Your sister says it's about your mom." Maria's heart dropped. Her mother, whose illness had brought her back to the US 8 years ago, had been stable recently, but her condition was always fragile. "I need to take this call," she told Klaus quickly. "It's a family emergency." He gave a sympathetic nod. "Of course. Take all the time you need." In a small back office, Maria picked up the phone, her hands trembling. "Elena, what's happening with Mom?" "We need to take her to the hospital," her sister said, her voice tight. "Her blood pressure's very high. The doctor wants to run more tests. It's not life or death right now, but you need help." Maria finished softly, already knowing the truth. Financial help. The silence on the other end was answer enough. Years of treatments had drained the family's savings. Every new episode meant more debt, more extra shifts, more sacrifices. "I'll send what I can," Maria promised. "First thing tomorrow." When she hung up, the weight of reality hit her full force. For one night, she'd tasted a glimpse of the life she could have had, the life she'd dreamed of finishing her degree for, but reality hadn't changed. Her responsibilities still chained her to the ground. When Maria returned to the ballroom, Klaus was deep in conversation with a group of executives. She slipped in quietly, ready to resume her duties. "Everything all right?" he asked, immediately noticing the shadow in her eyes. "Family matters," Maria answered with professional composure. "Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow." Klaus studied her closely, as though trying to read what she wasn't saying. "If you need to step away, Maria, I'm fine," she cut in with a polite smile. "What were we discussing?" The evening continued, but Maria felt torn between two realities: the glittering ballroom filled with possibility, and the sterile hospital room waiting for her mother. As she translated a discussion on corporate mergers, part of her mind raced with calculations: how many extra shifts she'd need, how many sacrifices it would take to cover the next round of medical bills. "You know what I admire most in a person," Maria Klaus said quietly when they found themselves briefly alone. "Authenticity. The ability to stay true to yourself no matter the circumstances." Maria looked at him, wondering if he could sense her inner conflict. "Sometimes being authentic is a luxury not everyone can afford," she admitted honestly. "Sometimes immediate needs force us to wear masks." Klaus fell silent, reflecting deeply on her words. At last he nodded. "Perhaps. But the best opportunities often appear when we dare to show who we really are, even when it feels risky." The orchestra began a new piece, and the conversation shifted elsewhere, but Klaus's words lingered like an echo. Who was she really, beneath the layers of survival and adaptation she had built for years? And more importantly, would she ever get the chance to truly find out? The next morning dawned bright and clear, a sharp contrast to the storm inside her. She had barely slept, torn between worry for her mother and uncertainty about her own future. When she arrived at the hotel earlier than usual, she was surprised to see Klaus already waiting in the lobby. "Good morning, Maria," he greeted in German with a warm smile. "I hope you rested well." "Good morning, Mr. Mueller," she replied, hiding her fatigue behind a professional smile. "Any changes to today's schedule?" "Actually," Klaus said, motioning toward a quiet corner of the lobby, "I'd like to talk with you before the day begins. Shall we sit?" Intrigued, Maria followed him. Once they were settled, he leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I noticed your concern after that call yesterday," he began, getting straight to the point. "I didn't want to intrude, but I wonder if there's any way I can help." Though the offer was sincere, Maria's first instinct was to resist. She had carried her family's burdens alone her entire life, never asking for help, never complaining. "That's kind of you, but it's personal," she said firmly. "Nothing that interferes with my duties." Klaus nodded in respect, then added quietly, "I understand. But if you'll allow me, years ago when I was just starting my company, I faced a similar crisis. My father fell gravely ill, and I was torn between pursuing my ambitions and caring for my family." Maria's eyes lifted, her interest suddenly sharpened. This vulnerable side of the successful businessman revealed a human dimension Maria hadn't fully considered. "So, what did you do?" she asked, genuinely curious. "I tried to juggle both," Klaus replied with a faint, bittersweet smile. "Worked all day, then cared for my father through the night. Nearly destroyed me. Until a mentor told me something that changed everything. Sometimes accepting help isn't weakness, it's smart strategy." His words struck a nerve, forcing Maria to confront her own tendency to carry every burden alone. "My mom is sick," she admitted quietly. "She needs medical care we can barely afford. I've been sending most of my paycheck home ever since I came back from Germany." Klaus listened intently, not interrupting once. "That's why I couldn't finish my degree," she continued once she'd started and couldn't stop. What was supposed to be a temporary pause became permanent. Medical bills, daily expenses. It just kept piling up. And yesterday he asked softly. "They need to take her to the hospital for more tests," Maria explained. "My sister can't cover all the costs on her own." Klaus was silent for a long moment, absorbing her words. Finally, he said, "Maria, may I make a proposal? My company funds scholarships for talented employees who want to finish their education. Usually they're for technical staff, but I think we could make an exception in your case." Maria blinked in surprise. "But I'm not one of your employees." "Not yet," Klaus replied with a faint smile. "I'm planning to establish a liaison office here in New York for our North American operations. I'll need someone with strong cultural and linguistic skills, someone exactly like you." The idea was so unexpected it made Maria feel like the ground beneath her had turned to quicksand. Could this chance encounter truly alter the course of her life? "That's very generous," she said cautiously. "But you barely know me. Why would you do this?" "Because I know talent when I see it," Klaus answered simply. "And because I once had people who believed in me when I needed it most. Sometimes that's all it takes to change a life." Before Maria could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from her sister Moms at the hospital. "We need $5,000 for the initial tests. Can you help?" The immediate crisis crashed hard against the future possibility Klaus had just offered. Maria felt frozen, torn between urgent need and life-changing opportunity. "I need time to think," she said finally. "This could change everything." Klaus nodded with understanding. "Of course. In the meantime, at least let me help with your mother's medical expenses," he offered. "Think of it as an advance on your future salary should you decide to accept." Her pride battled her reality. All her life, Maria had prided herself on fierce independence, solving problems without asking for help. But now, with her mom lying in a hospital bed and resources stretched thin, could she really afford to turn him down? "I'll think about it," she said at last, careful not to commit. The day's schedule waited. They headed together toward the conference hall where the summit's second day was about to begin. As they walked, Maria noticed several hotel staff watching her with mixed curiosity and suspicion. Among them, Javier's glare stood out. "Morning, Geller," he sneered as they passed. Forgot how to use a mop already. Your cleaning cart misses you." Klaus didn't catch every word but clearly understood the tone, shooting Javier a sharp warning look. Maria, however, kept her composure. "Good morning, Javier," she replied evenly. "Don't worry. I remember perfectly well how to use a mop. And I also remember how to respect my coworkers no matter their role." They moved on, but his words added to the storm already raging in her mind. Was she really ready for such a leap? Could she adapt to a corporate world after years of manual labor? And what if she failed? Sometimes the heaviest burden isn't our responsibilities, it's our fears. And right then, as she entered the conference hall beside Klaus, Maria felt the crushing weight of both. The sessions continued with presentations on emerging markets. Maria translated smoothly, though her mind was split between the words flowing through her and the decision looming over her future. During a short break, she excused herself, desperate for a moment alone. The women's restroom, with its pale marble walls and ornate mirrors, was empty when she walked in. She stopped at the sink, staring at her reflection as if she were looking at a stranger. The tailored suit, the neat hairstyle, the upright posture, it all felt like a costume, a version of herself borrowed from some alternate reality. "Who are you really?" she whispered to the mirror, allowing a rare crack of vulnerability. Just then, the door creaked open. To her surprise, it was Carmen, the receptionist, rushing in. "Maria, I've been looking for you," Carmen said quickly, her face tense. "Alex wants to see you in his office right away." Maria's stomach tightened. "Is something wrong?" Lowering her voice, Carmen leaned closer. "Javier filed a formal complaint against you. He claims you're abusing your temporary role, and there are rumors going around about you and Mr. Mueller." Heat rushed to Maria's cheeks, a mix of anger and humiliation. What kind of rumors? Carmen shifted uncomfortably. "You know how people are. They see a cleaning staff member suddenly close to a millionaire and they make their own conclusions, especially after Javier saw you leaving the lobby with him this morning." The injustice hit Maria like a slap. All her professionalism, her years of education, her honest hard work, reduced to ugly gossip born from prejudice. "I'll see Alex," she said with measured calm. "But first I need to let Mr. Mueller know I'll be stepping away for a moment." "Be careful," Maria Carmen warned with genuine concern. "Javier has a lot of influence with Alex, and several supervisors aren't happy about your temporary promotion." Maria gave a grateful nod at the warning. When she returned to the conference hall, she quietly updated Klaus on the situation. "Do you want me to go with you?" he offered, visibly upset at what was happening. "No," Maria replied firmly. "This is something I need to handle on my own. I'll be back as soon as I can." Alex's office felt even more intimidating than it had earlier that week. The hotel director sat behind his polished mahogany desk, his expression grave. In the corner, Javier stood with a thinly veiled look of satisfaction. "Please have a seat, Maria," the director said. "We have a delicate matter to discuss." Maria sat upright, hands resting calmly on her lap, her gaze steady. "We've received some troubling reports about your conduct," Alex continued. "It seems you may be using your temporary role to pursue personal gain. Could you be more specific?" Maria asked, her voice steady, refusing to be intimidated. The director exchanged an uneasy glance with Javier. "You've been seen in private conversations with Mr. Mueller outside of professional settings. There are also rumors about the nature of your relationship." Maria felt heat rise in her chest, but she controlled her tone. "Alex, my relationship with Mr. Mueller is strictly professional. Any private conversations were either part of my duties as his interpreter or discussions regarding a potential job offer he extended. Javier couldn't resist stepping forward, his voice dripping with mockery. A job offer. Do you really think a businessman of his caliber would seriously give you a real position? Come on, it's obvious what's going on here. Enough, Javier, Alex said, though without much conviction. Maria, you must understand your sudden change in status has created discomfort among the staff. Some feel you've forgotten your rightful place in this hotel. Your rightful place. The phrase echoed like a verdict. It was exactly what she'd always feared, that no matter her skills, education, or potential in their eyes, she'd always just be the cleaning lady. My rightful place. Alex. Maria replied with a calm that surprised even herself, is wherever my skills are best put to use. For 6 years, I've scrubbed floors and cleaned hallways because it was the job available, not because that defines who I am or what I'm worth. The director looked momentarily unsettled. No one questions your value, Maria, he said carefully. But you must remember, this assignment is temporary. Once Mr. Mueller leaves, you'll return to your regular duties. It would be unwise to develop unrealistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations, like what Maria asked, her voice firm, like being treated with respect, or having the chance to use my education and my language skills. A heavy silence filled the room. Javier stared at her half-shocked, half-disdainful, clearly not expecting her to push back so directly. What Alex is trying to say, Javier added maliciously, is don't get your hopes up. When the German leaves, you'll be back to scrubbing toilets where you belong. That's your place, Geller. Accept it. Something inside Maria broke free. 6 years of quiet endurance, of keeping her head down, of settling for less than she deserved, all of it crystallized into a moment of sharp clarity. No, Javier, she said, rising to her feet. That's the place circumstances put me temporarily. It's not where I belong, and I won't let you or anyone else decide my limits again. She turned to Alex, whose face showed genuine surprise. Alex. I've been a model employee for 6 years. Never late. Never complained. Always did my job. If my only mistake is daring to want more, then maybe this isn't the right environment for me. Are you resigning? The director asked, alarm flashing in his eyes. Maria paused, weighing the leap. No, Alex, she said finally. I'm asserting my worth. I will continue as Mr. Mueller's interpreter during his stay as agreed. What happens afterward will depend on the opportunities available and my own decision. She started for the door, then stopped, her voice steady and clear. And just so we're clear, any rumor about an improper relationship between Mr. Mueller and me is not only false, but says more about the person spreading it than it does about me. With that, she left the office, her hands trembling slightly, a mix of fear and freedom coursing through her. For the first time, she had openly challenged her superiors. Had she just made an irreversible mistake, or finally claimed the space she deserved in the world? When she re-entered the conference hall, Klaus met her gaze with a questioning look. Maria drew a deep breath, preparing to continue her work, as if nothing had happened. But inside, she knew something fundamental had shifted. She would no longer let the distorted reflection others cast on her determine how she saw herself. It was time to define her own. The afternoon passed in a blur of translations and presentations. Despite the storm raging inside her, Maria remained impeccably professional. By the end of the day, Klaus invited her to an informal dinner at the hotel restaurant, far from the stiffness of official events. I'd like to discuss some details about the offer I mentioned this morning, he explained gently. if you're comfortable with that." Maria agreed, fully aware of the curious eyes tracking her every move. The restaurant, styled with modern American elegance and overlooking a softly lit garden, offered discreet corners, perfect for private conversations. Klaus chose a quiet table near the windows. After placing their orders, he looked at her thoughtfully. "You seem troubled, Maria," he said softly. "May I ask what happened in your meeting with Alex?" Maria hesitated. She had kept her struggles private for so long that sharing them now felt dangerous. Let's just say she answered finally. "I stood up for my worth. Not everyone was thrilled about it." Klaus nodded knowingly. "It rarely is. When someone people underestimate finally shows their true potential, it unsettles them. It threatens the convenient narratives they've built." His words resonated so precisely with her situation that Maria felt an unexpected connection to this man, who on the surface seemed to belong to a world completely different from her own. "Would you mind telling me more about your proposal?" she asked, choosing to steer the conversation toward future possibilities instead of the conflicts weighing on her. Klaus smiled, clearly pleased by her interest. "As I mentioned, I'm in the process of setting up a regional office here in the US to coordinate our operations across the Americas," he explained. "I need someone who not only understands both American and European culture, but who's fluent in German and Spanish and has the intercultural sensitivity you've already demonstrated." As their meals arrived, he laid out his vision. It was a role as an intercultural communications coordinator with a salary 3 times what Maria currently earned, full health coverage that would also include her mother, and the chance to finish her university degree on a full scholarship. "The office is scheduled to open in about 3 months, Klaus added. "That should give you time to complete your final semester and graduate before officially starting." The offer was so perfectly aligned with her needs and aspirations that Maria couldn't help but feel there must be a hidden catch. "Mr. Mueller, I have to ask," she said cautiously. "Why me? Surely there are dozens of candidates more qualified on paper with corporate experience and completed degrees." Klaus considered her question as he swirled his wine. "Do you know what's the hardest thing to find in the corporate world, Maria?" he asked. "It's not degrees. It's not experience. It's authenticity combined with emotional intelligence. And you have both in abundance." He paused, his expression softening. "Besides, there's something in your story that feels familiar to me. The way you've navigated between cultures, languages, and circumstances shows a resilience that no university can teach." Emotion welled unexpectedly in Maria's throat. For years, she'd viewed her struggles as setbacks, detours that had derailed her ideal path. She had never considered that those same struggles might be valuable in themselves. "I'd need time to sort things out with my mom's care," she admitted at last, allowing herself for the first time to seriously consider the offer. "And I'd have to find a place near campus." Klaus smiled knowingly, taking her practical concerns as a good sign. "All of that can be arranged," he assured her. "What really matters is your decision in principle. The logistics are just details." As they discussed the practical aspects, Maria's phone buzzed with a message from her sister Mom's stable. "We need to talk about long-term care options." "When can you come?" Reality tugged at her again, grounding her in the responsibilities that had shaped her life for so long. "I need to visit my mother in the hospital," she said, showing Klaus the message. "Maybe I could give you my final answer tomorrow." "Of course," he replied with immediate understanding. "Take all the time you need. And if you need to leave early tomorrow to see her, we'll adjust the schedule." As they left the restaurant, they ran into Elise Weber in the lobby. The German woman greeted Klaus with a calculating smile, deliberately ignoring Maria. "Klaus, what a coincidence," Elise said smoothly. "I was hoping to discuss potential collaborations between our companies." Klaus responded with professional but measured courtesy. "Certainly, Elise. My assistant can schedule a meeting for tomorrow if that works for you." Elise cast Maria a sharp glance. "You've always had a unique eye for talent," she said with pointed emphasis. "But I must admit, this choice surprises me." "The best decisions," Klaus replied firmly, "are often the ones no one expects." Maria has demonstrated exceptional abilities, skills any smart organization would be lucky to recognize. The direct defense caught both Elise and Maria off guard. Before the moment could grow more uncomfortable, Maria excused herself politely. "If you'll excuse me, it's been a long day. I should get some rest." "Of course," Klaus said warmly. "Rest well, Maria. Tomorrow is another important day." As she walked away, Maria overheard Elise mutter in German, "I didn't realize we were hiring housekeepers for executive roles now." Klaus's response reached her ears clearly before she was out of range. "We don't hire uniforms or titles, Elise. We hire talent, integrity, and potential qualities that rise far above the shallow labels some people cling to." Those words stayed with her as she stepped out into the cool night air. At the bus stop under a starry American sky, Maria stood at a literal and metaphorical crossroads. To the right was the familiar road leading back to her modest apartment, to the life of responsibility and invisibility she had carried for years. To the left, the hospital where her mother awaited her symbol of the duties that had pulled her back to this country, and which she could now potentially support from a position of strength. And beyond, somewhere in the horizon, stretched a new path, one she had never truly believed could be hers. The decision she made wouldn't just shape her career. It would define who she chose to become. Would she remain the woman others insisted she was, or dare to claim the identity she knew deep down belonged to her? The bus pulled up, its doors opening like an invitation to change. Maria stepped on, knowing the real crossroads wasn't on the city streets. It was inside her. The hospital was an aging building with faded walls and long, echoing hallways. Maria knew the way by heart to room 307, where her mother had spent so many long stretches over the past 8 years. The scent of disinfectant and the steady hum of machines pulled her back instantly to countless sleepless nights. Hard conversations with doctors and bills that had shaped her life. Her younger sister, Elena, waited outside the room. At 30, she carried the weary look of someone who had shouldered far too many burdens for far too long. "You made it," Elena said softly, giving Maria a quick hug before stepping back. "How's everything at the hotel? Carmen mentioned your new role." A wave of guilt swept over Maria. While she was experiencing this unexpected opportunity, her younger sister was still pulling double shifts as a nurse, juggling work with caring for their mom. "It's complicated," Maria admitted, not sure where to even begin. "How's Mom stable? The doctors want to run more tests, but you know how it goes. First, they need the money." They walked into the room together where their mother, Rosa Geller, lay resting with her eyes closed. At 65, her face carried the weight of a hard life and years of battling illness. Hearing their footsteps, she slowly opened her eyes. "My girls," she whispered warmly, her voice weak but full of love. "It's so good to see you both together." Maria leaned down to kiss her forehead, noticing just how fragile her mother's skin felt under her lips. "How are you feeling, Mom?" she asked gently. "Like a stubborn old tree that refuses to fall," Rosa joked, trying to lighten the mood. "The doctors say the same as always. More meds, more tests, and of course, more money. Her blunt honesty never failed to take Maria by surprise. Rosa never sugarcoated her condition or pretended it wasn't as serious as it was. She knew the burden she was on her daughters. "Don't talk like that," Elena cut in. "We'll figure something out." "You always do," Rosa replied with a tired smile. "My brave girls. But sometimes I wonder, at what cost?" Her eyes settled on Maria sharp with a mother's intuition that could see straight through any facade. "There's something different about you today," she said softly. "Your eyes. They shine in a way I haven't seen in years." Maria glanced at Elena, then sat down beside the bed. "Something unexpected happened," she admitted, and began to share everything: the chance encounter with Klaus, her sudden role as his interpreter, and finally, the job offer that could change her life. Rosa listened intently, her eyes growing brighter as the story unfolded. "God works in mysterious ways," she murmured when Maria finished. "All those years you spent in Germany, the education you never got to complete, none of it was wasted." "But it's not that simple, Mom," Maria said quickly. "Taking this job would mean big changes for all of us. I'd have to move closer to the university to finish my degree. And while the salary would be better, at least in the beginning, I'd be tied up with classes. That means Elena would have to take over completely." Elena gave a look Maria couldn't quite read. Silence filled the room, heavy with unspoken fears and hopes. "I don't want to be the reason you turn this down," Rosa finally said, clasping Maria's hand in her frail ones. "You've sacrificed enough for me already." "It wasn't a sacrifice," Mom Maria replied, automatically repeating the words she had said countless times before. "It was a choice," Rosa corrected firmly, surprising her. "A choice forced on you by circumstances. But circumstances can change, and they have." Elena, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "Maria, do you remember what Dad used to tell us before he passed?" The memory stung, bringing tears to Maria's eyes. Their father, gone since she was 15, had been the one who fueled her dreams of education, pushed her to learn languages, and planted the belief that there was a bigger world beyond their small corner of Los Angeles. "I remember," Maria said softly. "He used to say, 'Geller girls never leave anyone behind,'" Elena reminded her. Then she smiled faintly. "Well, that works both ways. You've carried this family for 8 years. Maybe it's time we carry you for a change." Maria stared at her sister, stunned. She hadn't expected that kind of support, not with how much Elena already shouldered. "But how would you manage it all? You're already working doubles." "Daniel and I have been talking about moving into a bigger place," Elena explained, referring to her longtime boyfriend. "We could get an apartment with a room just for Mom, and with your new salary, we could even hire part-time help for when we're both at work." "I don't want to be a burden," Rosa interrupted quietly. "Maybe I should consider a nursing facility." "No," both sisters exclaimed at once, their voices overlapping. "Mom, we're not trying to get rid of you," Elena clarified quickly. "We're trying to find a way forward for all of us." A rush of emotions swept over Maria: gratitude for her sister, worry for her mother, and a cautious hope she hardly dared to name. "There's something else you should know," Maria said, remembering a crucial detail of Klaus's offer. "The job comes with full health insurance that would cover you, Mom, your treatments, your medications, even in-home care if you needed it." Elena's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you serious? Do you realize what that would mean?" Maria nodded. She knew exactly what it meant. It would mean the end of crushing medical bills, the end of choosing which treatments they could afford and which they'd have to delay. It would mean dignity and peace for her mother in her remaining years. Rosa, who had listened in silence, finally spoke, her voice breaking with emotion. "Maria, my brave girl," Rosa said softly, her frail hands tightening around her daughter's. "I think the universe is finally giving you back a piece of what you've given so selflessly." The three women sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of that possibility settle over them. It wasn't just a job offer at stake, it was the chance to completely redefine their lives, their roles, and the expectations that had shaped them for years. "So, you think I should take it?" Maria asked at last, searching her family's eyes for reassurance. "The real question isn't whether you should," Rosa answered with quiet wisdom. "The question is, do you want to? For once in your life, sweetheart, make a decision with yourself in mind first. We'll be fine." Those simple yet powerful words struck Maria like a revelation. For so long, her worth had been measured by sacrifice, by what she could do for others. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to allow herself the freedom to choose based on her own dreams and ambitions. As the night wore on, their conversation shifted toward practical details, and Maria felt something new growing inside her, a vision of a future where duty and desire weren't enemies, but allies. Hours later, stepping out of the hospital under a sky scattered with stars, she felt an almost physical shift within her, like tectonic plates finally realigning after years of pressure. The echoes of the past would always remain, but maybe now they could form the foundation of something new, instead of chains keeping her tied to a life of imposed limitations. The next morning dawned unusually bright and clear. As Maria got ready for her third day as Klaus's interpreter, her mind replayed the conversation with her family. Elena's unexpected support had removed one of the heaviest obstacles, but lingering doubts remained. When she entered the hotel, she immediately sensed the shift in the atmosphere. Groups of employees whispered in hushed tones, stopping abruptly when she passed. At the front desk, Carmen greeted her with a worried look. "Good morning, Maria. Alex left strict instructions. You're to report to his office before meeting with Mr. Mueller." A knot of unease twisted in her stomach. Something had shifted since yesterday's confrontation. The director's office felt more intimidating than it had before. Alex greeted her with stiff formality, motioning for her to sit. To her surprise, Javier was already there. His expression caught somewhere between smug satisfaction and disdain. "Miss Geller." The director began folding his hands over his desk. "We've received troubling information. It seems you may be considering a job offer from Mr. Mueller." Maria stayed composed, though inside she wondered how they'd even learned about it. "I am evaluating a professional opportunity." "Yes," she confirmed calmly. "Is there a problem with that?" Alex exchanged a quick look with Javier before continuing. "You must understand, Miss Geller, your contract here includes confidentiality and non-compete clauses. Using your temporary role to seek personal advantage could be seen as a violation of those terms." The implication hit hard. They were threatening legal action if she accepted Klaus's offer. With all due respect, Alex Maria replied, keeping her voice steady. "I'm a cleaning staff member, not an executive with access to trade secrets. And Mr. Mueller's offer has nothing to do with the hotel industry." Even so, Javier cut in with thinly veiled malice. "You're clearly using this position to make personal connections. At best, it's ethically questionable." Maria drew in a deep breath, steadying her rising frustration. "Ethically questionable," she repeated, incredulous. "What you find questionable is that a housekeeper might have the chance to improve her life." For the first time, Alex looked uncomfortable. That's not the point, Miss Geller. It's the principle. Mr. Mueller is our client, and you're here representing the hotel. As a temporary interpreter, Maria corrected firmly. A role that didn't exist until someone needed my language skills. Skills, by the way, that were ignored for 6 years until they became convenient. A tense silence filled the office. Javier, clearly irritated by her refusal to back down, stepped forward. The point is simple, Geller. If you take that job while still employed here, the hotel could pursue legal action. Do you really want to risk a lawsuit you can't possibly afford? The threat hung in the air like poison. Maria's heart pounded, but she refused to show fear. I understand, she said finally, rising from her chair. Is there anything else you need to discuss? Mr. Mueller is waiting. One more thing, Alex added quickly. We expect complete discretion about this conversation. It would be inappropriate to mention it to Mr. Mueller. Maria smoothed her suit deliberately before replying. Of course, Alex. Discretion has always been one of my qualities. Though I will point out no one mentioned these supposed clauses during the 6 years I spent scrubbing floors. Without waiting for a response, she headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned back. I'll be contacting HR to request a copy of my contract. I'd like to see those clauses myself. The flicker of alarm on Alex's face told her exactly what she suspected. The threat was a bluff, a desperate attempt to keep control. As she made her way toward the conference room where Klaus was waiting, a storm of conflicting emotions swirled inside her: anger at the injustice, fear of the consequences, and determination not to be silenced. Klaus greeted her with a warm smile that faded as soon as he saw her expression. Is something wrong, Miss Geller? He asked with genuine concern. Maria hesitated. Alex had been clear, say nothing. But deep inside she felt a growing rebellion against playing by the rules of people determined to keep her small. Mr. Mueller, could we speak privately? She asked at last, choosing a path she knew might change everything. They moved to a small, empty meeting room. Once the door closed, Maria told him everything: Alex's threats, Javier's accusations, and the warning to keep silent. This is absurd, Klaus said sharply, his face tightening with anger. A basic staff contract wouldn't contain restrictions like that. They're trying to intimidate you. I know, Maria admitted, but they hold power over my current situation. If they try to fire you without cause, they'll be breaking labor laws. Klaus cut in firmly. And they'll have to deal not just with you, but with my company's lawyers as well. The determination in his voice left Maria stunned. She wasn't used to having someone stand so firmly in her corner. I don't want to cause trouble, she confessed, her old instinct to stay small to avoid waves slipping out. Klaus met her gaze with unwavering intensity. Maria, sometimes trouble is exactly what it takes to create change. Unjust systems survive because people are too afraid to challenge them. He paused before continuing. But I understand your concern. If you'd rather wait until your current contract here ends before formally accepting my offer, I'll respect that. The position will still be waiting for you. Maria felt a surge of gratitude at his flexibility, yet inside her a new resolve was forming. No, she answered firmly, surprising even herself. I won't let fear dictate my choices. Not anymore. Klaus smiled as if that was exactly the answer he'd expected. In that case, let me make the necessary arrangements. My legal team can prepare an appropriate response to any action they might try to take. That day's conference centered on technological innovation in emerging markets. As Maria translated complex presentations on artificial intelligence and blockchain with ease, part of her mind was still processing her decision. Each technical term she handled effortlessly, each cultural nuance she clarified for Klaus, reinforced her conviction her skills deserved proper recognition and fair compensation. During a short break, Carmen approached her quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. "Maria, be careful," she whispered. "Javier's rallying some of the supervisors against you. They're filing formal complaints claiming you've been neglecting your duties." "Neglecting my duties?" Maria repeated, incredulous. "I'm doing exactly what the director assigned me." "I know," Carmen said, her face troubled. "But they're building a case just in case they need grounds to fire you. I just thought you should know." Maria thanked her, a fresh wave of determination rising within her. For years, she'd followed the rules, kept her head down, and accepted her assigned place, all in the name of stability for her family. But now, with a concrete offer on the table and her family's support behind her, the equation had changed. The same responsibilities that had once chained her down were now giving her the courage to face these obstacles head-on. When she returned to Klaus for the next session, it was with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. The bridges to her future were in sight, and the barriers others tried to raise no longer seemed so impossible. At the close of the day, as they prepared to leave, Klaus turned to her. "Miss Geller, have you come to a decision about our conversation yesterday?" Maria looked him straight in the eyes, with the certainty of someone standing at a turning point. "Yes, Mr. Mueller," she said clearly. "I'd like to accept your offer." Klaus's smile was warm and genuine. "Excellent. Then how about we go over the details tomorrow at breakfast? There's a lot to plan." That night, as she left the hotel, Maria noticed Javier watching her from the reception desk, his expression dark and brooding. But instead of lowering her gaze the way she once would have, she held his stare deliberately before walking on. The obstacles would still be there trying to block her way. But for the first time in a long while, Maria was determined to build bridges stronger than any walls placed in front of her. The next morning carried with it a sense of imminent change. Maria arrived at the hotel a full half-hour early, ready to face whatever came with the resolve she had discovered. At the front desk, Carmen hurried over, looking alarmed. "Alex is asking for you," she whispered. "He seems furious." Maria nodded calmly, not surprised. She had expected some kind of retaliation after ignoring their warnings the day before. "Thanks, Carmen. I'll see him after my breakfast meeting with Mr. Mueller. But he insisted you go immediately," Carmen pressed. "And I have a professional commitment with our most important guest," Maria replied evenly. "Alex will have to wait." She walked into the hotel restaurant where Klaus was already seated at a table by the tall windows overlooking the garden. Morning light streamed in, filling the space with an air of optimism that mirrored her own mood. "Good morning, Miss Geller," Klaus greeted warmly, standing as she approached. "I trust you slept well." "Good morning, Mr. Mueller," she answered, taking her seat. "Honestly, I slept better than I expected, given everything." Klaus smiled, clearly pleased. Sometimes knowing the path you've chosen brings a peace no material comfort can match. As coffee and fresh pastries were served, he slid a tablet across the table. On it were documents prepared by his legal team, a preliminary contract details of the health insurance plan that would cover her mother, information about the university scholarship, and a tentative timeline for the coming months. "As you can see, I've already taken the liberty of moving forward with preparations," he explained. "The position would formally begin in 3 months, enough time for you to complete your final semester. In the meantime, you'd receive a monthly stipend as an external consultant, so you could resign from your current role without financial worry." Maria reviewed the documents, struck by the care and thoroughness they reflected. Every detail had been carefully considered to make her transition as smooth as possible. "This is more generous than I ever expected," she admitted, her voice soft with emotion. "I don't even know how to thank you for this opportunity." This isn't generosity, Klaus corrected gently, his tone serious. It's recognition. Your combination of language skills, cultural knowledge, and analytical ability is exactly what my company needs to succeed here. The corporate world often fails to recognize talent when it comes in unexpected forms. I consider my ability to see beyond labels one of my greatest competitive advantages. As they discussed the practical details of the agreement, Maria noticed Javier and Alex standing at the entrance of the restaurant, watching them with a mixture of irritation and unease. "Looks like we've drawn an audience," she murmured quietly. Klaus followed her gaze and gave a small nod. "Does their reaction concern you?" "It used to," Maria admitted after a pause. "But now I realize their approval or their disapproval doesn't define my worth." He had never done it before, though it took me a while to realize that. Their conversation was interrupted when a hotel messenger approached and handed Klaus a sealed envelope. He opened it, scanned the contents quickly, and broke into a satisfied smile. "Excellent news," he announced. "The University of California has reviewed your academic record from Munich and is willing to accept your previous credits. With an intensive semester, you could finish your degree in comparative literature before officially starting with the company." The words struck Maria like a revelation. The dream she had buried 8 years earlier tucked away in a corner of her heart, as a painful memory suddenly returned, now tangible and within reach. "How did you manage that?" she asked, astonished at how effortlessly Klaus had accomplished something she'd always believed was impossible. "Let's just say my company's education foundation has strong ties with several universities," he replied modestly. "And your academic record from Munich was outstanding, which made things much easier." Before Maria could respond, Alex finally approached their table. He tried to maintain professional courtesy, but the tension in his face was unmistakable. "Good morning, Mr. Mueller," he greeted in stiff, heavily accented English. "Sorry to interrupt, but I need to speak with Miss Geller about an urgent personnel matter." Klaus answered with a polite but firm smile. "Good morning, Alex. I'm afraid we're in the middle of an important business meeting. Could this wait until we've finished?" The hotel director looked momentarily thrown off by the direct pushback. "It's an internal matter that requires immediate attention," he pressed now, turning to Maria. "Miss Geller, please come with me to my office." Maria felt every eye in the restaurant on her. In the past, she would have lowered her head and complied without question. But something inside her had shifted. "With all due respect, Alex," she said clearly and firmly, "I am fulfilling my assigned role as Mr. Mueller's interpreter. Any administrative matter can wait until this meeting concludes." The shock on the director's face was obvious. He wasn't used to staff at her level refusing his direct orders. "This is unacceptable," he muttered loudly enough for both to hear. "We'll discuss the consequences later, Miss Geller." As he walked away, visibly irritated, Klaus leaned in and murmured in German, "Impressive. It takes strength to hold your ground under pressure." "Years of practice," Maria replied with a small smile. "Though I'll admit I've never stood up to a superior quite this directly." "That's not defiance," Klaus corrected gently. "That's self-assertion. And there's a very big difference." They returned to reviewing the documents, finalizing the details of her new position. When breakfast wrapped up, Klaus handed her a business card. "This is the number of our company's legal representative here in the U.S., he explained. "If you face any intimidation or threats from hotel management, contact him immediately." Maria accepted the card, grateful for his support, though she hoped she wouldn't need it. "Thank you. I'll do my best to handle things professionally." "I have no doubt you will," Klaus said firmly. "But remember, you're not alone in this anymore." Those words echoed deeply within Maria as she headed toward the director's office. For years, she had carried every burden on her own, always feeling isolated. The idea of finally having support, of not fighting every battle alone, was as unfamiliar as it was comforting. When she entered the director's office, she found not only Alex, but also Javier and two men she didn't recognize. Their sharp suits and briefcases made it clear they were attorneys representing the hotel chain. "Please have a seat, Miss Geller," Alex said sternly. "These gentlemen are from the hotel's legal department." Maria sat tall, keeping her expression neutral. Internally, she silently thanked Klaus for giving her legal contact information. "Miss Geller," one of the lawyers began, "we understand you are considering a job offer from one of our hotel guests, specifically Mr. Klaus Müller." "That's correct," Maria answered calmly. "I have received and accepted a professional offer." The attorney exchanged a quick glance with Alex before continuing. "You must understand this could constitute a conflict of interest given your current employment. There are also considerations regarding confidential information and intellectual property belonging to the hotel." Maria listened patiently, letting him finish. When he finally paused, she responded with surprising clarity. "With all due respect, gentlemen, my role as a member of the cleaning staff does not give me access to any confidential hotel information. My temporary assignment as an interpreter has been strictly communicative. I have had no access to strategic or proprietary data. Furthermore, the position I've accepted with Mr. Müller's company has nothing to do with the hotel industry, so there is no market conflict." The second lawyer stepped in, clearly not expecting such a precise answer. "Even so, your contract includes clauses that I reviewed my contract this morning," Maria interrupted, pulling a folder from her bag. "The standard service staff agreement I signed 6 years ago contains no non-compete clauses or post-employment restrictions. I also consulted a legal advisor who confirmed that any attempt to block my professional advancement under these circumstances could be a violation of my labor rights under U.S. law." A stunned silence followed. Alex looked genuinely rattled while Javier's face twisted with barely contained anger. Additionally, Maria continued, seizing the moment, "I'm prepared to submit my formal resignation, effective immediately, if that makes the situation easier. Mr. Müller has already stated he can arrange for external interpretation services for the remainder of his stay." The director exchanged nervous looks with the attorneys, who seemed to be reconsidering their approach. "That won't be necessary," Alex finally said, his tone shifting to something more conciliatory. "You may complete your assignment as Mr. Müller's interpreter as originally agreed. Regarding your future job opportunity, the hotel will not raise any objections." Maria kept her composure, though inside she felt a rush of triumph. This wasn't just a practical win, it was a moment of profound personal validation. For the first time, she had defended her worth not through silence or compliance, but with confident, measured words. "I appreciate your understanding," she replied professionally. "Is there anything else you'd like to discuss with me?" The director shook his head, clearly eager to end a meeting that had not gone his way. "You may go, Miss Geller. Mr. Müller is likely waiting for you." As she left the office, Maria felt lighter than she had in years. The very words she had once studied so passionately, words that filled the pages of the books she had carried through long nights of study, had become her greatest weapon. She hadn't needed to shout, threaten, or manipulate. She had only needed to speak her truth with clarity and conviction. Walking back toward the conference hall where Klaus awaited Maria, reflected on how language wasn't just a tool to connect with others, it was a way to define her own reality. The words we choose for ourselves and for those around us shape the limits of our world. And at last, she had found the exact words to expand hers. The following days unfolded in a strange limbo. Maria continued her role as interpreter, accompanying Klaus to meetings and conference events. Yet everything carried a sense of impermanence, like wearing a suit you knew you'd soon take off, but still wearing it with pride. The hotel staff's attitude toward her had subtly shifted. She was no longer the subject of whispered gossip or dismissive glances, but of cautious curiosity, as if they were recalibrating their idea of who Maria Geller really was. On the morning of the 5th day, while translating a presentation on renewable energy, Maria noticed Elise Weber watching her from the back row. Gone was the disdain from Elise's eyes. In its place was something far more complex, a mix of surprise and perhaps even reluctant respect. During the coffee break, Elise approached her directly, something unthinkable just a few days earlier. "I heard Klaus offered you a position with his company," she said in German, studying Maria with new eyes. "That's right," Maria confirmed in an even tone. "I'll be coordinating intercultural communications for Latin America." Elise nodded slowly as if processing the weight of that information. "You know," she said, "finally, I always noticed there was something different about you, the way you devoured those literature books while my children slept, the way you carried yourself when you spoke with our international guests. Always with dignity." Maria didn't respond right away, caught off guard by the unexpected admission. "I wonder why I never mentioned it before," she said at last. Elise looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I suppose it was easier not to see it," she admitted with unusual honesty. "It's simpler to keep people in the categories we've already assigned to them." A heavy silence lingered between them, filled with the weight of years of unequal interactions and unchallenged assumptions. "I wish you success, Maria," Elise said, finally handing her a card. "If you ever need contacts in Munich for your new role, you can call me." Maria accepted the card, recognizing it for what it was. Not a full apology, but an acknowledgement that something fundamental had shifted between them. "Thank you, Frau Weber," she replied with a faint smile. "I'll keep that in mind." As Elise walked away, Klaus approached with an intrigued expression. "Looked like an interesting conversation," he remarked. "Unexpected," Maria corrected. "It seems some people only truly see you when you're about to leave their lives." Klaus nodded knowingly. "It's human nature. We often don't value what's right in front of us until it's at risk of slipping away." That afternoon brought a visit to a community project in an underserved neighborhood on the outskirts of Los Angeles, part of the conference's social responsibility program. Maria found herself translating discussions on education technology and opportunities for disadvantaged youth. While touring a newly renovated youth center, a shy teenager of about 15 approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am," the girl said softly in Spanish. "Is it true you speak German?" Maria smiled warmly. "Yes, I lived in Germany for a while." The girl's eyes lit up. "I'm learning it at school, but it's so hard. Do you think one day I'll be able to speak it like you?" The question, so simple and sincere, struck something deep within Maria. She saw in this girl a reflection of herself years earlier, full of dreams and potential, yet unsure of what possibilities truly existed for someone with her background. "Of course you will," Maria said firmly. "Language is just the beginning. It opens doors you don't even know exist yet." The conversation continued briefly, with Maria sharing a few tips for learning languages. As the group prepared to move on, the girl asked impulsively, "Can I ask what your job is? I've never met a Latina who speaks German like you." Maria sensed Klaus watching the exchange from a respectful distance. "Right now, I'm an interpreter," she explained. "But soon I'll be leading intercultural communications for an international company." The girl's look of awe was immediate and genuine, Really? And how did you get there? Maria paused, weighing her words carefully. By learning languages, working hard, and she hesitated, then added with quiet conviction, always remembering that your worth isn't defined by the job you have at any given moment, but by the skills you build and the person you become. As they left the youth center, Klaus remarked, "That girl will remember this conversation for the rest of her life." Maria glanced at him curiously. "Why do you say that?" "Because she just witnessed something powerful," Klaus explained. She saw proof that someone like her can break through barriers that once seemed impossible to cross. That kind of moment changes how someone sees their own future. That night, back in her small apartment, Maria stood in front of the bathroom mirror. She studied her reflection closely, searching for traces of the inner transformation she was undergoing. The same eyes, the same skin, the same faint lines that had been there a week ago stared back at her. And yet the woman looking at her now felt profoundly different. It wasn't just the more formal clothes she now wore as an interpreter, or the straighter posture she carried without even noticing. It was the clarity in her gaze, a steady determination that spoke of someone who had finally reclaimed her own story. Her phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Elena. "How's Mom?" Maria asked immediately. "Stable," her sister replied. "The doctors say she might be able to come home in a few days." "Maria, I got the insurance paperwork you sent. Is it true? Will it really cover all of Mom's treatments?" "Yes," Maria confirmed, a wave of relief washing over her. Even the specialized medications and rehab therapies. Everything. On the other end of the line, Elena went silent for a moment before answering, her voice trembling. "I can't believe it. After all these years of fighting over bills, settling for half treatments because we couldn't afford more, it feels too good to be true." "I know," Maria agreed softly. "Sometimes I still pinch myself to make sure I'm not dreaming." Elena's voice broke as she added, "Mom cried when I told her, but not out of sadness. She said she finally feels like she can breathe without being a burden to us." The words struck Maria harder than she expected. For 8 years, the 3 Geller women had carried not only the physical weight of illness, but also the heavy emotional toll it brought their mother's guilt for needing help. Elena's frustration at not being able to do more, and Maria's quiet resignation to a future limited by circumstance. "She won't have to feel that way anymore," Maria promised. "None of us will." After hanging up, Maria sat at her small kitchen table and opened her worn copy of The Metamorphosis by Kafka. The book, its margins full of her old notes, had been her silent companion for years, a reminder of the academic world she had been forced to leave behind. Her eyes fell on the famous opening line. When Gregor Samsa woke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed into a monstrous insect. Maria smiled at the irony. Kafka's Metamorphosis had been into something grotesque, a metaphor for alienation and dehumanization. Her own metamorphosis, however, was a return to herself, the woman she had always been beneath layers of survival and adaptation. She glanced at the small calendar on the wall. In less than a week, Klaus Müller would return to Germany, and with him her role as his interpreter would end. But unlike Kafka's Samsa, trapped in a transformation he never chose, Maria now stood on the threshold of a metamorphosis she had chosen freely. What lay ahead no longer felt like a threatening unknown, but a promise waiting to be fulfilled. A promise not only to Klaus or her family, but most of all, to herself. The final night of the conference arrived with all the grandeur of a gala in the hotel's grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over tables adorned with white roses and orchids, while a chamber orchestra played classical pieces from a corner of the room. The international business elite, dressed in their finest, celebrated the event's success with champagne and lively conversation. Maria, wearing an elegant black dress Klaus had insisted on gifting her for the occasion, moved gracefully among the guests. She translated when needed, but found herself more often engaging in the conversations directly. Her knowledge of literature, international politics, and comparative culture surfaced naturally, surprising those who had only known her as the interpreter. "It's remarkable to see your transformation," Miss Geller-Klaus said during a quiet moment together on a balcony overlooking the illuminated gardens. "In just 1 week, you've gone from blending into the background to shining in your own light." Maria smiled, appreciating the observation, while knowing it wasn't quite accurate. "It's not that I've fundamentally changed, Klaus Muller," she corrected gently. "It's that I finally allowed myself to be seen. The woman you see now was always here, just buried under circumstances and other people's expectations." Klaus twirled his champagne glass thoughtfully. "An important distinction," he agreed. "It reminds me of a line from Goethe, wenn wir uns selbst fehlen, fehlt uns doch alles. When we are missing from ourselves, we are missing everything." Beautiful Maria replied softly. "And true. For years I felt something essential was missing, not realizing it was my own authenticity." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Alex, whose demeanor toward Maria had changed noticeably since their confrontation days earlier. Now he treated her with cautious deference, as though recalculating her place in the equation. "Mr. Mueller." "Miss Geller," he greeted formally, adjusting his tie. "I hope you're enjoying the evening. I have news that may interest you." "Of course," Alex Klaus responded politely. "What is it?" The director cleared his throat, his nerves evident. "The executive board of our hotel chain has expressed interest in forming a strategic partnership with your company, Mr. Mueller. They've been very impressed with your vision regarding emerging markets." Klaus exchanged a meaningful glance with Maria before replying, "That's certainly an intriguing proposal. Of course, any collaboration would require a deep understanding of both organizations' labor practices and corporate values." The implication was clear, and Alex caught it instantly, nodding quickly. Then he turned his attention toward Maria. "Miss Geller, the board has also asked me to extend a formal offer for you to lead our new intercultural relations department," Alex announced smoothly. "Of course, with a salary appropriate to your qualifications." The proposal landed like a thunderclap in the middle of the conversation. Maria looked at the director in genuine shock, momentarily unable to form a response. Klaus stepped in, giving her a moment to gather herself. "It's certainly a generous offer," he noted, "though I should mention that Miss Geller has already accepted a position with my company." Alex kept his professional smile, though the tension in his eyes betrayed him. "We understand, but we were hoping you might reconsider. After all, you know this hotel, this city, and our operations well." He paused deliberately. "And your family is here." Maria instantly recognized the tactic. It wasn't a casual comment. It was a calculated appeal to the same responsibilities that had kept her tethered to a job far beneath her skills for years. "I sincerely appreciate the offer, Alex," she replied, her voice steady and resolute. "It's recognition I value, especially considering that for 6 years my requests for transfer to other departments were systematically ignored." The director shifted, uncomfortably forced to acknowledge the truth. "That was an error in judgment on our part," he admitted reluctantly. "But now we see your potential, and we'd like you to develop it here in your own country, close to your family." A week ago, such an offer would have felt like an impossible dream. But now Maria could see it clearly for what it was. Not a genuine recognition of her worth, but a desperate reaction driven by corporate interests. "My family fully supports my decision to accept Mr. Mueller's offer," she said calmly. "But I'm grateful the hotel has finally recognized that I was always more than just a housekeeper." Alex gave a stiff nod, realizing his bid had failed. "The offer will remain open. Miss Geller, should you ever change your mind," he said before bowing slightly and walking away. Once they were alone again, Klaus looked at Maria with an inquisitive expression. "Are you certain about your decision?" His proposal wasn't without practical merits. Maria scanned the ballroom filled with people who just a week ago would have walked right past her while she cleaned without ever noticing her presence. Completely certain, she replied firmly, "This isn't just about a paycheck or a title. It's about being in an environment where my potential was valued from the very start, not as a last-minute response to external pressure." Klaus's smile was warm and approving. Wise words. After all, as we say in Germany, neue Besen kehren gut, aber die alte Bürste kennt die Ecken. New brooms sweep well, but the old brush knows the corners. Maria chuckled at the proverb so fitting for her situation. Exactly. And I'd rather be a new broom in a place where I can sweep freely than an old brush trapped in the same corners forever. As the evening continued, Maria noticed Carmen watching her from across the room. The receptionist, one of the few who had ever shown her kindness during her housekeeping years, seemed hesitant to approach. Maria seized a quiet moment to walk over. "Carmen, I'm glad to see you. How have you been?" The young woman blinked, surprised that Maria had approached her first. "I'm good, thank you. I heard about the hotel's offer and your decision. I just wanted to say I admire you. Not everyone would turn down a position like that to step into the unknown." Maria studied her closely, recognizing the familiar conflict in her eyes, the pull between the safety of the familiar and the longing for something greater. "Sometimes the unknown is exactly where we need to be," she said gently. "You know, Mr. Mueller's company will soon be hiring bilingual administrative staff for the New Mexico office." Carmen's eyes widened in astonishment. "Really, I'm studying business administration at night, but I never thought I'd have a chance at something like that." "Send me your resume," Maria interrupted, handing her a card with her new professional email address. "I can't promise anything, but I'll make sure it gets to the right people." The gratitude that flooded Carmen's face was immediate and genuine. "Thank you, Maria. Truly thank you." As Maria returned to Klaus for the formal dinner, she reflected on the brief exchange. Just a week earlier, she had been Carmen, a woman full of untapped potential confined to the narrow box others had placed her in. And now, almost dizzyingly, she stood in a position to open doors for others. The weight of that realization struck her deeply. Her transformation wasn't just personal, it had the power to ripple outward, changing the lives of those around her. During dinner, Klaus was invited to give a closing address. To Maria's surprise, he called her to join him at the podium. This conference has focused on investments, markets, and corporate strategies. Klaus began in German, with Maria translating fluently into Spanish. "But allow me to speak about the most valuable investment any of us can make, recognizing and cultivating human potential wherever it may be found." His gaze swept over the audience. "Just a week ago, when I arrived at this magnificent hotel, I faced an insurmountable barrier: the inability to communicate. All the corporate resources and technology at my disposal were useless. The solution came from the most unexpected place: an employee whose true abilities had been invisible until that crucial moment." He gestured toward Maria, who continued translating with perfect composure, though inside a wave of powerful emotion rose within her. Miss Geller didn't just solve an immediate communication problem. Klaus said, his voice carrying through the ballroom. She reminded me of a vital truth in both business and life, that extraordinary talent often hides in plain sight, obscured by our assumptions and prejudices about where excellence should be found. A low murmur of approval rippled across the audience. Maria noticed several executives nodding in agreement, while the hotel staff, many of whom had known her for years, looked on with expressions that shifted from shock to reluctant admiration. I'm pleased to announce, Klaus continued, that Miss Geller will be leading intercultural communications for our New Mexico office, bringing her remarkable combination of language skills, cultural sensitivity, and unique perspective to our global team. Applause erupted, spontaneous and thunderous. For Maria, the sound felt surreal, as though she were caught inside a dream she was afraid to wake from. And now Klaus added warmly, turning to her, "I'd like Miss Geller to share a few words of her own for the first time at this conference, not translating for anyone else, but speaking for herself." The microphone was placed in her hand, and suddenly Maria found herself under the gaze of hundreds of expectant faces. For the briefest moment, she felt the old instinct tug at her, the urge to shrink back, to minimize her presence, to make herself invisible like she had for so many years. But that impulse vanished as quickly as it came. In its place rose a clarity she had never felt so strongly. "Thank you, Mr. Mueller." She began deliberately weaving between Spanish and German, giving voice to both sides of her identity. 8 years ago, when I returned from Germany with my studies unfinished to care for my sick mother, I felt like I had failed, that circumstances had decided for me, and that my potential would remain forever unrealized. She paused, meeting the eyes of those watching, many of them leaning in, as if they didn't want to miss a word. What I didn't understand then, and am only beginning to grasp now, is that our worth is not measured by a diploma, a position, or a paycheck. It lies in our inherent abilities, in our resilience, and in our willingness to keep growing even when the world seems determined to box us in. Her gaze swept across the room, briefly resting on Alex, on Javier, on Carmen, and finally on Klaus. "The real revelation isn't that someone finally recognized my potential," she continued firmly. "It's that I finally allowed myself to claim it after years of letting other people's expectations define my limits." The ballroom was utterly silent, every ear tuned to her words. We all face defining crossroads in our lives, moments when we must choose between the safety of the familiar and the uncertain promise of something more. Mine came in the form of a simple question in German. "Would you like some cinnamon tea?" She smiled softly at the memory. Sometimes all it takes to change a life is the courage to speak when it would be easier to remain silent. When she finished, the applause was deafening. This time, Maria didn't shrink from it. She accepted it with the calm grace of someone who had finally come home to herself. As she returned to her seat, she caught sight of something she hadn't expected: tears in the eyes of more than a few people, not only among the international guests, but also within the hotel staff who had known her for years without ever truly seeing her. In that moment, Maria realized the true nature of her transformation. It wasn't just her life that had changed. It was the perception of possibility for everyone around her. She had become, without meaning to, a mirror in which others could see their own unrecognized strengths and unrealized potential. And that, perhaps, was the most profound revelation of all. 3 months later, on a clear spring morning, Maria walked through the sunlit halls of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, her footsteps echoing against the old stone tiles. Under her arm, she carried a folder containing her completed thesis language as a bridge identity and cultural translation in comparative literature. The intensive semester had been exactly that: intense, Long nights of study after full days spent helping prepare the launch of the new office. Weekends split between visits to her now much improved mother, finally receiving the full treatments she needed, and hours in the university library. But today, as she turned in the final document that would officially complete her degree, Maria felt a circle in her life close perfectly. Stepping out of the administration building, she found Klaus waiting for her in the campus gardens. Dressed casually in jeans and a light shirt, he looked more relaxed than he ever had during the whirlwind days of the conference. All set, he asked as she approached. Maria held up the stamped receipt from her thesis submission, her smile radiant. Officially delivered. The defense is in 3 weeks, but the committee has already hinted the work is in excellent shape. I never doubted it, Klaus said with genuine pride. Ready for the next step. They walked together toward the parking lot where a car waited to take them to the new company office. Located in a sleek glass and steel building in the city's financial district, the facilities had just been completed, and today would mark the official inauguration. During the ride, Klaus handed her a small package wrapped simply in plain paper, a little gift to commemorate the day, he explained. Maria opened the package with curiosity and found a brand new edition of Kafka's The Metamorphosis. But it wasn't just any edition. It was a beautifully bound leather bilingual copy, German and Spanish, side by side. Check the first page, Klaus said gently. Inside, written in elegant script, was a dedication for Maria Geller, who understood better than Kafka himself that true metamorphosis isn't about becoming something foreign, but about finally becoming who we were always meant to be. With admiration and respect, Klaus Muller. Maria felt her throat tighten with emotion. It's perfect, she whispered. Thank you. When they arrived at the new building, Maria stopped in awe at the bronze plaque next to the main entrance, Muller International Latin American Division. Beneath the company name in smaller but equally bold letters, it read, Director of Intercultural Communications, Maria Geller, M.A. The degree listed was a small premature courtesy, since she technically had yet to defend her thesis, but the gesture touched her deeply. Inside the office was everything she had imagined, and more bright open spaces, modern design infused with traditional Mexican elements, and an atmosphere that encouraged both creativity and efficiency. To her surprise, waiting at reception was a familiar face. Carmen, impeccably dressed in a sharp business suit, greeted her with a radiant smile. Good morning, Miss Geller. Mr. Mueller, she said in carefully practiced German. Welcome to your new office. Carmen Maria exclaimed, genuinely delighted. Your German has improved so much. Carmen beamed with pride. I've been taking intensive classes since I was hired. I want to live up to the expectations here. Klaus gave an approving nod before stepping away to check on technical details, leaving the two women alone for a moment. Thank you, Maria Carmen said softly. This opportunity has changed my life. Now I can finish my degree without pulling double shifts. And my family? Don't thank me, Maria interrupted gently. You earned this position with your own merit. I just opened a door that should have been open to both of us a long time ago. By noon, the office was buzzing with guests, international executives, local officials, members of the press. To Maria's joy, her mother and sister arrived too, accompanied by Elena's longtime boyfriend, Jorge. Her mother, looking far healthier than just months ago, took in the scene with shining eyes. My girl, she said as she hugged Maria tightly. If your father could see you now. Elena finished the thought, her own eyes misting. He'd know he was right about you all along. He always said you'd go far, you just needed the right chance. The most emotional moment came when Klaus invited Maria to join him at the podium set up for the ceremony. Addressing the crowd, he spoke briefly about the company's vision for Latin America, then turned to introduce her formally. "And now it's my honor to present the person who will make this vision possible, someone whose story embodies the very values we strive to uphold: excellence, resilience, and the power to build bridges across cultures. Ladies and gentlemen, our Director of Intercultural Communications, Maria Geller." As she walked up to the podium, Maria felt a wave of déjà vu, recalling the gala at the close of the conference 3 months earlier. But this time there was a crucial difference. She wasn't here to translate someone else's words. She was here to speak her own. "Thank you all for being here on this special day." She began switching naturally between Spanish, German, and English without a translator. Exactly a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing here in this position, I probably would have laughed or thought they had mistaken me for someone else. Laughter rippled gently through the crowd. My path to this moment wasn't straight or easy. It had detours, pauses, and times I thought I'd hit a dead end. But now I understand that every one of those moments was necessary. Every experience shaped the person I am today. Her eyes found her mother in the crowd, tears of pride glistening. In our field of intercultural communication, we often say translation is about more than changing words from one language to another. True translation is about building bridges of understanding, making sure ideas and emotions flow freely across the barriers that divide us. She paused, letting her words settle. Today, we're not just opening an office, we're opening a space where those bridges will be built every day. A place where people from different backgrounds, languages, and perspectives will find common ground to collaborate and create together. Klaus watched from the side of the stage, his face full of confidence in her. "Let me close with a personal reflection." Maria continued, her voice growing firm. "The languages we speak shape how we see the world and ourselves. But there's an even deeper language that transcends words, the language of mutual recognition. The language of truly seeing another human being beyond the labels and categories so easily imposed." Her final words carried a quiet force. "In this new chapter, I commit not only to facilitating communication between languages, but to fostering that deeper recognition, the language of the soul, that allows us to see each other in our full humanity and potential. Because in the end, that is the most important bridge any of us can build." The applause was warm and heartfelt. As Maria stepped down, her eyes caught something unexpected. Javier, her former supervisor, stood among the guests. He'd apparently been invited as a hotel representative. His face carried an expression she had never seen before, a mix of astonishment and perhaps a flicker of remorse. When their eyes met, Maria felt no resentment, no urge to gloat, only a steady peace, knowing that life's circles often close in ways no one can predict. The ceremony flowed into a casual reception. Maria moved easily among the diverse groups, connecting people, guiding conversations, already living the role she had just accepted. Klaus watched her occasionally from a distance, clearly satisfied with the choice he had made. Later, after most of the guests had left, Maria found herself alone for the first time in her new office. It was sleek, yet welcoming, with shelves waiting to be filled with reference books, a panoramic view of the city, and one small but meaningful detail. Hanging on the wall framed was her old hotel badge, the one that had once labeled her simply as housekeeping staff. Klaus entered quietly, noticing her thoughtful expression. "A reminder?" he asked, intrigued by the choice. "Not exactly," Maria replied. "More like a tribute. To what? To every version of myself that brought me here, she said softly. Even the ones that felt like detours or dead ends. Each one was necessary. Each one taught me something I needed to know. Klaus nodded, understanding. Der Weg ist das Ziel. The journey itself is the destination. Exactly, Maria agreed. And my journey is far from over. This isn't an ending, it's a new beginning. As she gazed out over the city bathed in golden sunset, Maria felt a profound sense of wholeness. Not just the satisfaction of reaching a goal, but the deeper realization that she had finally found her true voice, her authentic place in the world, not handed to her by others, but claimed by her own courage, persistence, and willingness to see herself not as circumstances once defined her, but as she had always been. In essence, a woman of extraordinary ability, ready to build bridges where others only saw divides. Because in the end, the most powerful language isn't the one we speak with words, it's the one we express through our actions, our choices, and the way we decide to define ourselves beyond the labels the world tries to impose. And in that universal language, Maria Geller had finally found perfect fluency. Wow, what a journey. Write Maria's story really left me thinking long after I finished writing it. And I think the biggest lesson here is this. Our true value doesn't always show on the surface. Sometimes the world sees only our uniform, our job title, or the labels they've placed on us, but deep inside we carry skills, dreams, and resilience that can change everything once they're recognized. Maria reminds us that one moment of courage can open doors we never thought possible. She had every reason to stay silent, to remain invisible, but she chose to step forward and speak. And from that simple act, her entire life began to transform. Isn't that powerful? I also love how the story highlights dignity and humanity. Klaus saw Maria for who she really was, not just for her role in the hotel. That's a reminder for all of us. Treat people with respect, because you never know the battles they've fought or the talents they're hiding. And on Maria's side, she shows us that even when the world underestimates you, believing in yourself and standing up for your worth can completely rewrite your future. For me, the human side of this story is what makes it so meaningful. It's about family sacrifice and the courage to finally choose yourself without abandoning those you love. And it's about breaking those invisible walls that society often puts around us. But that's just how I feel. I'd really love to know what you think. What part of Maria's journey spoke to you the most? Have you ever felt underestimated? And how did you rise above it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And as always, thank you for being here.